Hello, everyone. My guest today is Alexander Yampolsky. He's a recognized expert in the security field, running his company SecurityScorecard.io, which is the leader in security ratings used by hundreds of customers like GE, McDonald's, Pepsi, and many others. Before founding the company, he was CISO at Gilt Group and has held lead technologist and security roles at Goldman Sachs, Oracle, Cinchcast, and Microsoft. He's a published author and active speaker in the security and software development communities and has a PhD in cryptography from Yale University. All right, Alexander, you ready to take us to the top?
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, Vladimir Putin's your best friend. Every time there's a hack, people pay you more money. That's how it works.
Well, cybersecurity is a hot space right now, so customers are looking for good solutions.
All right, so tell us what you do and how you make money. Is it a pure play SaaS model?
Yeah, so we're an enterprise SaaS company, and the idea that we came up with is that the market is moving to the cloud. And so companies do business with other cloud companies. You might store your files in Dropbox. You might store your sales leads in Salesforce. And when companies do all these relationships, how do you know that your cloud providers are being as diligent as you are when it comes to protecting your data? And we came up with a way of how to non-intrusively from outside measure a security posture of any company in the world and give them a scorecard, a rating or letter grade, A, B, C, D, F, representing how secure they are.
What, you're basically trying to hack them, and if you get in, you say you fail?
So we look for signals that indicate to us whether or not the company is doing a good job. For example, imagine you're looking at a website, and on the front of a website, it says copyright 2008. Well, it's 2018, so you just discovered that the company has not updated its systems for 10 years. And so we came up with hundreds of different signals like this. Many of them are much more sophisticated than what I just described that indicate what's going on within the company.
I mean, so your sales tactic there obviously works. Why don't you just email everyone and say you're vulnerable, right? Like, it's a fear tactic thing. They're all then gonna buy.
Well, I mean, I think that fear, uncertainty, and doubt is a common technique for many security startups. We don't subscribe to this approach. We want our customers to recognize value from a software that they use. So the way that people use us, it's a software as a service. You pay us annual subscription, and you get
how much on average per year?
So on average, it's $2,000 per year to monitor a single company. So, but big companies have tens of thousands of vendors. So some people are paying us $1 million a year. Some people are paying us $20,000.
What would you say in averages, though, just to avoid going down every customer cohort?
Average contract value could be around 80 to 100K per year paid upfront.
Okay, got it. Very good.
But people use us to monitor their suppliers. Some companies are using us to compare themselves to the industry, to competition, and prove to the board of directors that their security investments are paying off. Cyber insurance companies are using us to make underwriting decisions. So this concept of security ratings is really beginning to gain traction. And just like we have credit scores, the security scores are becoming an integral part to doing business today.
And how many customers have you scaled to?
So we have over 450 customers and rapidly growing every single year.
Okay, what's rapidly growing mean?
Doubling in size.
Doubling. Okay, I mean, if I take 450 customers times the ACV, 80 grand you just told me, I mean, you're doing north of $3 million a month. Is that generally accurate?
It's in a ballpark. It's in the ballpark of where we are. Yeah, we're growing very nicely. We're 130 people, headquartered in New York, growing very rapidly this year.
Okay, but I mean, that number, I mean, sometimes people give discounts to their early customers. Sometimes that number is high. I mean, have you guys passed $3 million a month in revenue, or are you below that?
We're in the 25 to 30 million ARR this year.
Got it. Okay, you'll hit that this year, or you passed 25 million already?
We are on way to do it this year.
On way to do it. Okay, so and if you're doubling year over year, that means last year you did what, 12 and a half at least, or 13?
Yeah, around that number. We're growing very nicely.
That's good. What's driving most of the growth? Are you driving expansion revenue across the current base or adding new customers, net new customers?
So it's both. We are, the way that we see a lot of customers use Security Scorecard is some customers, naturally a lot of people say, well, how can you really measure security of a company from outside? Are you really going to be able to see detailed information? And when people start looking at our technology and they start deploying it, they realize that they instantly gain visibility to tens of thousands of companies who are who they're doing business with, and that will ultimately help them save time and money. And that, as a result, grows more adoption. So we're seeing strong land and expand out of our existing customer base. People are happy. Our net promoter score is in the is in the 60s. So like people really like what we do, and customer satisfaction is very high.
What's churn?
The churn is under 10%.
And that's gross logo churn per year?
No, if you factor in the upsell, we're negative. Like we're in the negative double digits. People are buying a lot more.
So just to be clear, annually you're churning at a gross level 10% of revenue. When you add back expansion, you're net negative.
We're net 15. Like we're around net 15%. Negative 15.
Yeah, correct. Or said differently, you're retaining 115% of your revenue.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Congratulations, by the way. That's obviously not an easy thing to do. So that's good stuff. Break down your team for me. Of the 130, how many of them are inside sales?
Well, I would say roughly half of our company are in the product technology. We're an engineering-driven company. We believe our vision as a company, we want to create a new language for how companies talk about security. So we want chief risk officers, board members, CFOs, regulators. We want them to start using scorecards as part of an everyday dialogue. We want people, just like people bake into contracts 99.9% uptime requirements, we want people to start baking into contracts minimum scorecard requirements. And that's the vision we're trying to create. And so half of our company is dedicated to product and engineering because we believe that ultimately, I mean, if you have crappy technology and really good sales and marketing team, that's only going to last you so long. If you have an amazing technology and crappy sales, marketing, execution, then like people are still going to value your technology.
Yep.
Like luckily we have good technology and good sales, marketing, execution, but we're dedicating quite a lot of people in our company towards product innovation.
How many months does it take you to get back your CAC on a customer?
Customers pay us upfront. So, and given the retention rate that we have, we see in very good economics metrics. I don't want to disclose it, but, we see in very good efficiency.
Okay. But in terms of payback period, I mean, it sounds like you're south of 6 months if they're paying you all up front.
Depends. We're under a year.
Okay. Yeah. That's fair enough. Under a year. And when you do, so, and just to be clear, if you're under a year and average ACV is 80 grand, it means you're willing to spend up to 80 grand to acquire one of these customers. Where are you spending that typically?
We see very good network effects out of what we do. Because if you have a company who is using us to monitor 10,000 plus of their suppliers, naturally those suppliers also want to know what their scorecard is. They want to know how to get better. They want to know how to improve. For example, suppose you have a very important marketing relationship. And that marketing relationship says, I'm going to put in $2 million into Nathan's podcast, but we're concerned about your security. Well, it's going to be an incentive for you to sign up for security scorecard because you want to make sure you're protected. So the very strong network effects that we see in. We've seen good return on investment from conferences, from events. For example, we did a big splash at RSA. We launched a new product recently called Breach Insights that nobody else in the market has that measures concentration risk. We're spending heavily on events and just brand recognition.
How much a year on events would you say? More than $1 million?
I'm sorry, say again?
How much per year on events would you say? More than $1 million?
Yeah, we're spending more than $1 million on events.
Okay. And then last economics question here before we move on to more of your story. Lifetime value. What do you assume lifetime value is?
I mean, we see in LTV to CAC over 3, which is good in the enterprise SaaS space.
Yeah. So if your CAC is 80 grand, you're saying more than 240 grand in LTV.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. Interesting. Okay, good. Tell us more about the backstory here. So what year did you launch the company in?
So we launched the company in the beginning of 2014. And the story is that I was a chief security officer at Guild Group. And one day we were looking at a solution that helped mitigate e-commerce fraud. It was a software as a service that helped mitigate e-commerce fraud. It would look and say, hey, Nathan today is logging in from New York buying $200 worth of clothes, but all of a sudden you're in Austin, Texas buying $1,000. Something is suspicious. And so it was a very good solution, and we had to integrate our systems with that. And we looked at the contract, we looked at the penetration test results, everything looked great. And literally at the last moment when we started integrating with that company, we looked at their systems and we discovered unencrypted credit card data floating in their systems. And that was an oh shit moment for me because I realized I could lose my job as a chief security officer due to negligence of somebody else. And the question really stood out to me, the question that nobody in a market is thinking about how to measure security. There's got to be a way to come up with objective metrics that measure cybersecurity. And that's what we came up with. And we launched the company in 2014, spent most of 2014 building a product, and saw some very good adoption since then.
And you've bootstrapped or have you raised?
We've raised venture money.
How much?
So to date, we raised a little bit over $60 million. The seed was led by Evolution Equity and Bold Start Ventures, great investors. Then we did a Series A by Sequoia Capital, Series B by Google Ventures, and then the Series C was led by Nokia Growth Partners, Intel, AXA, and Moody's participated.
When was the Series C?
It was around October of last year.
Okay, and how much was the Series C?
It was $27.5 million.
27. Okay. Have you broken $250 million valuation yet?
So we are
flirting with it.
We are flirting with that valuation.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, given that we made more headway, we should be above that valuation right now.
So, are you planning to raise again this year? I mean, or do you want to get to break even and cash flow positive?
So we're in a good position where most of the money that we raised is still in a bank. So we don't need to go raise anytime soon. Right now, we're focused on growing the business. Right now,
wait, are you cash flow positive today or no?
No, we're venture backed, so we're not cash flow positive.
Well, but you just said all the money is still in the bank.
Yeah, a lot of our money is still in the bank. We're having very strong quarters. With very good cash flow. Like most of the money that we raised is still in a bank. We don't need to raise.
Yeah, but Alexander, you understand how those two things can't be the same, right? You can't say all your venture money is still in the bank, but then also say you're your cash flow positive.
Well, the money from Series C, meaning.
Got it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. We didn't have to raise at the Series C front also, so we have enough money for multiple years. We're not planning to raise anytime soon, but we focused on growing a business and really unlocking the massive opportunity here.
There's a lot of companies that are kind of in, I would say maybe attacking this from a different angle, like KnowBe4 comes to mind, Stu, and he's kind of going at it from bottoms up approach. And it's not necessarily a rating per se, but there's a lot of companies that I could see where it makes natural sense for them to try and make you an acquisition offer. If someone came and offered you $500 million for the company, do you sell?
Well, I mean, I talk to everybody. I talk to customers, investors, strategic partners. You always talk to people. But our focus right now is we want to recognize our vision. As I mentioned, our vision is to create a new language for how people talk about cybersecurity. If you think back to kind of like a interesting business analogy, if you think back to Henry Ford's innovation was not the fact that he came up with a low-cost automobile or that he pioneered a very efficient assembly line. Henry Ford's innovation was the fact that he envisioned a society where many regular people will be automobile drivers. Like people didn't drive automobiles, only rich people could afford automobiles. And so Henry Ford envisioned when many people all over the world will be drivers. And so we're envisioning a similar world where CFOs, chief risk officers, general counsels are using our scorecards to measure and quantify risk. And this world doesn't exist today, but we're marching towards that vision. And that's really our goal. That's what we're focused on.
All right, very good. I like the vision. Let's wrap up here with the famous five, Alexander. Number one, what's your favorite business book?
Sure. So one of my favorite business books is Behind the Cloud by Mark Benioff, about how he created Salesforce. It's a very good book where he talks about the history of Salesforce, many of the tricks that he used to build it, and that's one of my favorites.
Number two, is there a CEO you're following or studying right now?
Sure. Well, I'm a big fan of Elon Musk. I think that he's a very inspirational guy. He's a very smart guy. I met him a couple of years ago at a Sequoia Capital offsite, and I learned a lot of interesting things just from a casual conversation with him. When I asked him, how does he know that what he's working on during the day is really making a difference? He said to me, at the end of each day, he reverse engineers his day and says, how did I spend my time? Which meetings did I attend? Who did I speak to? Were there things I could have delegated? Were there things that I shouldn't have been doing? And that was very good advice. So yeah, Elon Musk is one of my favorites.
Number 3, what's your favorite online tool for building a business?
So I like to use Evernote. I'm a big fan of I'm a big fan of Evernote. How I start each day and each week is I basically create a list in the beginning of each week, and I say here are the 3 most important tasks that I need to get done this week, and here are the batch tasks that I just kind of need to get done, but they might not be as important. And I always ask myself, if I do these 2 or 3 things, how am I going to advance the vision? How is the company going to be better? And I love, so I use Evernote religiously every single day.
Number 4, how many hours of sleep do you get every night?
So it changed. I used to be a big believer that I should work as much as possible, but you realize as you get older that you need balance. So I try to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. I typically go to sleep around 11 to midnight, and I wake up at 6 a.m. You always want to have a good lifetime balance.
And what's your situation? Married, single, you have kiddos?
Married and 2 kids, 9-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Oh, good. And how old are you?
So I'm 37.
37. Okay, last question, Alexander. Take us back to your 20-year-old self. What do you wish that he knew?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So there's a good question. Somebody asked me that question once. The person asked me, "What do you think is the job of a goalkeeper in soccer?" And I answered, "Well, the job of a goalkeeper is to prevent the other team from scoring." And the person said, "No, that's wrong. The job of a goalkeeper is the same as it is for every other player in the field. It's to win the game. It's not to it doesn't matter if you're a soccer player or a goalkeeper, you're all a single team. You all work towards the common goal." And so one thing I would give advice to myself if I met myself at 20, think more about how to build cohesive teams. How do you get people to follow you? How do you get people to work together? It's a bit of a cliche advice, but high-performance teams are what make or break a company. It's a huge, huge difference.
Guys, there you have it from Alexander. Focus on your team. He launched Security Scorecard back many years ago after he realized a big vulnerability at his prior company and said, wow, I could get fired for this. I've got to create a standard. He's now focused on creating the standard security metric, which hopefully gets used by many, many companies. Launched it in 2014 today. He's working with over 450 customers, doing north of $2 million per month in revenue, hoping to break that $25 million ARR mark later this year, doubling year over year. So healthy growth, net negative revenue churn, which is obviously a healthy metric to be at. $80,000 on CAC is a max less than 12-month payback period. Lifetime value to CAC, obviously super healthy with his team of 130 people based in New York. Alexander, thank you for taking us to the top.
Thanks, Nathan.